Good morning, everyone. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from two brilliant legal minds who have taken one of the most complex areas of law, corporate securities, and made it clear, relevant, and practical. We have here Atty. Joanne Ranada and Atty. Vien Gabato. So, both of them are not only respected practitioners and educators, but also champions of accessible legal knowledge. So with their new book entitled Law on Corporate Securities is more than just a reference. It is a powerful tool for students, lawyers, and business professionals navigating ever-evolving corporate landscape. So let us welcome the authors who turned the securities laws into something you'll actually want to read. So before we start, kindly introduce yourselves.
Please. Hi everyone. Good morning. I am Joanne Ranada for my students out there. Shout out sa mga estudyante ko dyan. We're going to start the semester very, very soon. I'm a commercial law practitioner. I also, aside from my day job, I also am a professor in 5 different universities. You have Argyle University School of Law, Ascot Law, University of Makati School of Law, University of Asia Pacific Law School, and Lyceum of Makati Law in Makati. So, yeah, I think that's everything.
Yes. Hello there. As you know, I'm Atty. Vien Gabato. Of course, you always see me here in Central Books because of my books in political law. But for this venture or for this purpose, I'm here having this another humble work together with my colleague here, Atty. Joanne, as to the law on corporate security. So aside from political law, I used to do corporate work. Of course, in litigation, in private practice, I do some corporate work. But also, it would be also worth noting that I previously worked also with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I also have experience with regards to the workings of corporate practice and corporate regulation insofar as government is concerned. So together with Atty. Joanne, we share this endeavor in trying to make some complex discussions on certain corporate law aspects be simplified or demystified, and this is one of these ventures or endeavors that's why we are here today.
Your book demystifies corporate securities law. What inspired you to write it now, and what gap in legal education or practice were you hoping to fill?
Of course, we have this subject in the usual subject in the bar called commercial or mercantile law, but when we speak of commercial or mercantile law, it goes beyond the classroom because it is something that we see in actual practice. Like, for example, in the law on corporate securities, there is an active participation of regulation coming from the SEC, as well as this concept of self-regulation with trading indexes, particularly with the Philippine Stock Exchange. The corporate securities is an actual way of life because it moves businesses. It refers to how businesses would thrive under economics and how would the public will participate in such commercial transactions. But at the same time, in this participation, there should be regulation. There should be also a knowledge insofar as the ordinary businessman or the ordinary person interested in commerce to know their rights, to know the law, and what or what not to do when it comes to corporate regulations. We have to note that corporate securities is usually used to entice people, but sometimes or not, if not most of the time, many do not know much about corporate securities, that they tend to fall prey or fall victim. That is why the SEC sometimes issues warnings. They issue show cause orders or cease and desist orders to certain companies who would have acted in misrepresentation against the general public. The SEC also issues warnings insofar as other companies who might sell securities, because if your securities is an unauthorized security, the same might not be might have, dubious or spurious in character. So the public should be aware on that aspect of securities are much regulated in the industry.
To add also to what Attorney Gabato said, there are a lot of investment scams that are happening now. So we have to look into, it would be nice for everybody to look into what's the background of the regulation. So on a more personal note, which Attorney Gabato and I share, when we were students, we were taught under the learned intellectual mind of former Attorney Lalia. And when we were students, we did not have any reference material on the Securities Regulation Code. Even when I teach it now, sometimes students would have a hard time finding the concepts and understanding the concepts. So with the revised Corporation Code, having a little bit of the SRC provisions in it, it's so hard for them, it's difficult for them to understand all the concepts in a very ordinary corporate law scenario without having any reference material. And that is what we are bringing with this book. So we're presenting it in a way that it will be understandable by law students, the practitioner, or even the ordinary layman. Ordinary layman, especially on the part of all the scams that are happening now.
I'm just wondering, if you could rewrite one outdated corporate or securities regulation with a single bold paragraph, what would it say?
Okay.
Actually, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. So what we could rewrite, if we read now the Securities Regulation Code, this was passed in 2000. Although in 2000 we are still in the transition with manual and computerized trading, especially with the stock exchange. It was a transition period. But of course, the Congress has anticipated, so that's why they passed the SRC sometime in 2000. So right now, I think there should be if there's going to be a securities regulation, I think it's more on trying to bridge the gap between manual and computerization. Because if you would see a lot of businesses nowadays, especially securities that are also defined by the SEC as of now, like for example, cryptocurrency. This involves transactions which involves a digital framework. So I think the SEC or the Philippine Stock Exchange, or I hope Congress will also see in the future that there must be an emphasis allowing ease of doing business by using more of digital platforms, like encouraging electronic signatures, make it as a norm, for subject to certain protocols and certain regulatory aspects.
Yeah, it's more of it should bridge the gap already of the old and the new. The new more on electronic platforms, everything that's happening now. We're in the digital age. Electronic signature should be accepted. Filing of the regulatory reports and the requirements should be easier. Learning about it.
Since the digital technology is evolving, in a world where TikTok teaches investing and Reddit can move markets, how do you see the role of corporate securities lawyers evolving?
I think that's good.
Reddit daw. Sikat kasi siya sa Reddit.
So I think it's the evolution of corporate lawyers is more on to embrace now these digital platforms. When you talk about securities lawyers or corporate lawyers, they look beyond the surface. And traditionally, we're just talking about like face-to-face transactions or maybe lectures, discussions that are very face-to-face. But now, the evolution, especially with the digital age and a lot of these social media platforms, they now look into embracing these platforms and trying to enlighten the minds of everybody on what securities regulation is, how do you properly invest, what should you look at. You should not just look at the surface, you have to look behind that that request maybe, or that application that someone wants you to invest in their company. That's the evolution that I'm looking at.
Yes, actually, I recall a story about Reddit. This was a few years ago. I think there was this company in the United States, but what happened was those who opposed the measure of that big company, those traders, the minority traders, they resorted to Reddit to criticize or to to defend themselves.
Which is also happening now.
So I think it's really important. As I said earlier, it's about the evolution. The law should also embrace the evolution of from this manual to this digital age.
In my next question, we will just shift a little bit. So were there any chapters that sparked debate between the two of you as co-authors? And how did you resolve legal or literary disagreements?
There was none.
There was
I think it stemmed from the fact that since we both came from SEC, we already knew what we wanted to present. I don't think it was a challenge. I think it was more of, let's add this, let's add that, and then we knew where to stop.
Yes, because when you write books, sometimes you tend to add something, then we're not going to add it.
Yeah.
then let's add it. Okay. Actually, we had a sort of a bit of discussion on derivative securities because it's a very technical thing. If you discuss the objective of us writing the book is to demystify it, to make it simple. Derivative securities is a bit challenging, although the Supreme Court has rulings on derivative security, so we tried to discuss on the line of how the Supreme Court decided it. So yeah, we include it, but it's not on a disagreement type of sense, but it's more on, does the reader want to know this, this concept?
Yeah, what
we decided, of course, we have to add it in.
We also had cryptocurrency, anti-money laundering, and initial coin offerings. Everything that's happening in our society today.
Okay. So if this book were a listed company, how would you pitch it to skeptical law students or young practitioners looking for books to read on that matter?
I don't know if this is a stereotype or a norm, but there are always these bar subject demons. Sometimes people do not want tax
or nego,
or they do not. Generally, they don't. Sometimes they veer away with corporation law. It depends on the student, because some are much interested in criminal law or in political law. Although we know naman that political law is a general practice. Okay. But if you want to say it bluntly, if you want to know the facets of mercantile law on commercial law, particularly corporation law and its related laws on corporate securities, you'll have a nice set of clienteles in the future going forward, because you'll be able to explain to them the complexities, the challenges in the commercial setting, and especially the corporate securities is a bit legal, as well as there would always be these technical and challenging factors, especially if we're going to talk about trading into a listed company. There should be this understanding, aside from the legalities, should also understand the market structure. Remember that not everything is legal. It's the legal aspect is one thing. The legalities would only guide us as to what to do correctly. But at the end of the day, it's about what is really happening. So you have to balance what's actually happening outside vis-a-vis how are we going to apply the laws.
Because if I were to pitch this book, our day-to-day lives are governed by economic factors and, of course, capitalism. So for the ordinary citizen, maybe even young practitioners, it is always best to look behind the surface. And this is the objective that me and Attorney Gabato had in mind when we prepared the book. It is presented in a way that it can be used in law school, but the ordinary citizen can still understand. Because if someone will go to them and say, we'd like you to invest in these securities, in this investment, hindi mo nang pala alam, baka late investments kang pala yan. Pero at least, it will be hard na pag binasa mo yung batas, mahirap talaga, the law is very technical. But the way we presented it in this book makes it easier for everybody to understand what they're going to be dealing with.
So where they can get a copy of Law on Corporate Securities and what else they could get about it?
We have, it's available in Shopee, Lazada, the Central Law Books website. Yes. All the branches around Metro Manila, definitely. What will you get out of it? Everything you need to know about corporate law. Yes, this is a book focused on the Securities Regulation Code, but do take note that the Securities Regulation Code, there are snippets of it in the Revised Corporation Code. And if you do not read them together, you will not be able to understand what corporate law is all about. And this is basically what we are presenting to everyone. And this is why we made this book for everyone.
I hope that you would be engaged in reading the book, especially that when we speak of securities, what is security? They might even the law student would wonder, what does securities
Intimidate.
mean? Yeah, it's a very intimidating course or subject. We hope that we do justice in explaining or trying to simplifying or trying to point out relevant jurisprudence insofar as corporate securities is concerned. We hope that you'll be able to grasp this knowledge of securities, law, and regulation with our book.
Thank you very much for your time, Attorney Joanne and Attorney Vien. So, Central Books are rooting for your new book entitled Law on Corporate Securities. So, everyone, check out this book. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.